This weekend, the world's ranked 9th team in World Rugby, Australia, will take on the 11th ranked team, Georgia, in what is sure to be a very interesting clash in Pool C in this year's Rugby World Cup. I'm going to preview that game in this video. Hello and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan who's living here in beautiful, hot Cancun in Mexico. And today we've got 41 degrees Celsius and it's going to be hot in France this weekend for the rugby teams, but not quite as hot as it is here today. But in this video I'm going to be talking about Australia against Georgia, a very appetizing game, one would say, in Pool C for this year's Rugby World Cup. And I'm really looking forward to this game because I think it's going to be a cliffhanger for all sorts of reasons. Now, I know nothing about Georgian rugby, so I'm going to confess that right up front. But as we go through this World Cup, I'm going to learn a lot more about that team, and in particular the names and how to pronounce them. But I'm going to be really interested to see. I've only watched a part of their game against Scotland, which I thought they were very impressive in the first half, and it gave me a little bit of an inclination as to who their standout players could be in this year's Rugby World Cup. I do know a lot about Australian rugby and the Australian rugby team that's come over under Eddie Jones's tutelage, and it's going to be very interesting to see whether they can bounce back from 5 losses so far under Eddie Jones. So that will be the key story, I guess, this weekend, whether or not Eddie Jones can get a win on the board for his new tenure as Australian coach. Now, I'm going to be doing comprehensive reviews of all the games that I watched during the Rugby World Cup, and that's not going to include just the big teams. So make sure you hit the subscription button on this channel, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to play your part by dropping your thoughts in the comments. I'm really enjoying a lot of the comments that are coming in from around the world, and we have viewers from all over the world, both in rugby nations and people that are just interested in the game of rugby, which is what I absolutely love for this channel to be. We want to grow the sport around the world, and by getting more people connected to the beautiful game, that's what it's all about. Now, what some would say amazingly, that there's only 2 places between these two teams in the Rugby World rankings at the moment. As I mentioned, Australia is currently ranked number 9 and Georgia is ranked number 11. In between them sits Wales. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds during this year's Rugby World Cup. So it looks to me through this team announcement from Australia that Eddie Jones is starting to get his selection for his A team in place now. There's still just a couple of positions I think he's still trying to work out, and the first one is at fullback, with Ben Donaldson coming in at fullback for Callaway. I think this is a good move. I think Donaldson has a lot of potential, and it'll be good to see how he slots into this game where he's going to have some pressure, but I think Australia are going to be expected to win this one. So let's see how Donaldson goes at fullback. And then on the wings, I really like the Australian wingers. They've got a lot of power and pace, and in Mark Quanta Wasi, we have a player that could be a real superstar at this year's Rugby World Cup if he gets a lot of ball and a lot of opportunity. The thing with Mark at the moment is his defense. A lot of people are starting to call him out on his defense. So let's see how he goes against Georgia and whether he brings his A game into this particular match. On the other wing, Corabetti's is one of my favorite players. He's a fantastic attacking winger. He's also fantastic when it comes to defense, and there's yards and yards of YouTube videos that you can go and watch about Corabetti scoring tries but also saving tries. So watch out for those 2 wingers for Australia in this match. And then in the centres, they've gone with Pataya and they've gone with Karevi. A good pairing here, and Pataya can get through any defensive line in World Rugby today, so he's pretty exciting. And again, this is just a case of Australia being able to execute their skill set and getting enough clean ball to do something with it. So I don't think Karevi and Pataya are going to be the issue in this game for Australia. I think their real issue is going to be around number 9 and number 10. That's where it's all going to work or not work for Australia in this game. So inside Carter Gordon is Tate McDermott at halfback. I like McDermott. I think he's good at pretty much all halfback skill sets. He's got a good pass on him. He knows how to read the game. and he's also very dangerous when he gets an opportunity, or he creates an opportunity to run from the back of a maul or a line-out situation. So watch for Tate McDermott making some probing runs around the ruck and maul during this game against Georgia. So there's the Australian backline. I think it's a very good backline. Watch out for Ben Donaldson at fullback, see how he goes this weekend, and expect to see Mark Nawanta Quantamasi and Corabetti score some tries in this game against Georgia. Looking at the reserve backs in this game for Australia, we've got Nick White, we've got Fekete, and we've got Vunivalu. Vunivalu I thought was really good against France, and until he got a yellow card and he wasn't quite able to capture that form once he came back on late in the game. But I think he's starting to understand how to play rugby, convert from rugby league, of course, Vunivalu, and I expect to see him do some good stuff in this Rugby World Cup. Let's see whether he gets a good run in this game against Georgia. So a good back line. Let's see how Ben Donaldson goes at fullback for Australia, and whether or not we can actually see this Australian back line really playing up to its potential against Georgia. Then we move into the forwards for Australia, and I think Eddie Jones now is starting to feel as though he's got his first team picked as far as forwards go. We've got Valentini at number 8, and on the flanks we've got Fraser McWright and we've got Tom Hooper. Impressed with both of these guys, playing very good rugby, but they've got to hang in there for 80 minutes or so and really take it to the opposition. So we'll see what those two can bring to the game. And then in the locks we've got Will Skelton, of course, who's the captain of Australia at the moment. Man Mountain there at locks, and going to be responsible for winning a lot of ball in set piece for Australia in this game, along with Richie Arnold, who is the other lock for Australia. So a good locking combination. I think so. They also play well when it comes to the breakdown situation. Skelton's very good at getting in over top of the ball, keeping his feet on the ground. Of course, he's a very big man and very strong, and he's able to win a lot of ball for Australia in that breakdown situation. So watch out for that in this game against Georgia. So having a look at the Aussies front row, Taniela Tupou, Dave Parecki and Angus Bell. It's a good front row without being a superstar front row. It'll be interesting to see how they go up against Georgia, who seem to have 15 forwards on the field most of the time. But a good pack for Australia, and I think they'll bring a lot of good stuff to this game. They just need to really get on top of the Georgia forwards early in this game, and we saw that didn't happen when Georgia played Scotland in the first half in that match. Then looking at the Aussie bench for the forwards, we've got Faisa, Shoop, who else have we got there? Nongor, Leota and Gleeson. So a solid bench for Australia, and hoping to see more of Zane Nongor in this Rugby World Cup and see what he can do. Team from Australia, and I've been saying that actually when they've been playing their other games, that they put a good team out on paper, but they haven't really executed. But let's have a look at their form so far this year, because they have lost 5 matches in a row, but there's a bit of a story there, I think, in some of those games. So looking at their results so far, and of course their first up game this year was against South Africa in South Africa. It was a bit of a mauling. South Africa really turned up on that day, 43 points to 12, and Australia never looked like they were getting into that game, but everybody gave them the benefit of the doubt. It was the first time that Eddie Jones was taking them on board in this tenure of his, so they were given a bit of a leeway. But I think the crunch really came down for Australia, where they played Argentina in Australia and they lost that game 34-31, and they had a chance to win that game and close it out in the dying minutes, but Argentina were just too good, and they came back with that rolling maul after various phases of play and scored that brilliant try right on full time. So they snatched that one from Australia, and I'm sure that did something psychologically to Australia, losing that close match in Australia. And then after losing to Argentina, the Wallabies looked forward to playing New Zealand twice in a row, and that was always going to be difficult. The first one in Melbourne at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and the All Blacks took off with that game 38 points to 7, and I think the Australian hole got a little bit deeper on that night. Everybody was excited to see what the return fixture in Dunedin was going to look like, and the Wallabies went a lot closer in that game, had their opportunities to win it, but they lost that one 23 points to 20 and came over to Europe looking to start their campaign in the Rugby World Cup. But before they do that against Georgia in the weekend, they had that game against France last weekend. They got mauled by the French team 41 points to 17. but there were glimmers of hope in some of those games, and that's why I think a lot of people are not writing Australia off just yet. And as I've been saying, if they can have one decent win in the first couple of matches in this Rugby World Cup, we could see a completely different Wallaby side as the tournament continues. And I expect that to happen against Georgia this week. Now, looking at Georgia, they've had 3 games as their lead up into this year's Rugby World Cup, and we're going to have a look at them now. The first one was against Romania. They won that comfortably 56 points to 6 and really showed that they had the potential to score a lot of tries. No one really knew where Romania's rugby level was at that time, so I guess it wasn't until their second game where they showed up and they played against the USA, who's really rated in World Rugby, and of course the United States are going to be hosting the Rugby World Cup in 2031. But they bet Team America 22 points to 7, and people started taking notice a little bit more of Georgia. So it was a very interesting game to watch them play against Scotland at Murrayfield a couple of weeks ago, and they were actually in the lead 6 points to 0 at half time. And I guess some people like myself were thinking, well, could this be an upset? But Gregor Townsend rung the changes in for Scotland in that second half, and they ended up winning that second half 22 points to 0, and they ended up winning the game 22 points to 6. But Georgia showed enough in that game, and I was very impressed by their number 10, Makava, who I'm sure we're going to see a lot of this weekend against Australia. He's got a brilliant boot on him, but he's also an elusive runner, and he's very, very busy for a number 10. He gets into a lot of the play, so watch out for Makava at number 10 this weekend. I can't talk too much about the rest of the Georgian team, so I'm sorry to anybody from Georgia who's watching this particular video, but I'm going to take a very close eye on these guys in the weekend, and I'm going to be able to talk a lot more about the team in total and individual players. So that's going to be my homework for this weekend when it comes to the Georgian team. But I expect Georgia, from what I saw against Scotland in that first half, to put up some keen opposition against Australia this weekend, and this game could be either a banana skin for Australia, or it could be the turnaround in their fortunes that they've all been looking for, both the players, the coaching staff, and of course the Wallaby fans across the world. So how's Australia going to win this game against Georgia this weekend? Well, first of all, they're going to use their kicking tactics to soften up Georgia, I think. Tate McDermott's going to put some box kicks in, and Carter Gordon's going to put some deep kicks into the Georgian territory to try and get some field position for Australia. And then I think Australia's going to be too fast and too big for the Georgians out wide in their back, so expect to see Karevi and Pataya playing a big part in that, and then getting the ball out to Australia's great wingers, and also including Ben Donaldson in the back line. And I think that's where Australia's going to win this game. They're just going to have too much pace over the 80 minutes for Georgia, and Georgia's not going to be able to live with them. So it could be a tight battle up front in the forwards in the first half, but once Australia get that dominance through some good possession, but also through some good kicking. So their kicking game is going to be very important. If Tate McDermott and Carter Gordon can get some good kicks away, put the Georgians under pressure, and expect to see some chips over the top as well, which is also going to put the Georgians on the back foot. I think that's how Australia's going to win this game against Georgia. So don't forget to head over to the community tab on my YouTube channel and put your vote in for the polls I have up there for this weekend's game. There's some interesting percentages there for some of the teams, so looking forward to seeing the results from that. Okay, that's it for me. Until next time, everybody stay safe and stay well out there. And as of tomorrow, France versus the All Blacks, start enjoying this amazing Rugby World Cup. I'm sure there's going to be amazing games all across the different pools this weekend, and I'm going to be here to review them all. So until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye for now.